The morning sunlight stretched across Emma's farm, golden and warm, lighting up the field she had tended for years, the smell of fresh hay and earth filling the air. A quiet calm wrapping around her as she moved from the chicken coop to the apple trees, humming softly to herself, the rhythm of farm life comforting yet sometimes lonely, her mind wandering over memories of family gatherings long past, when laughter echoed through the barns and her nephew's mischievous grin had always made her heart lift, the sound of tires on gravel suddenly snapping her out of her thoughts, Emma's brow knitting as she walked toward the gate, wondering who could be arriving unannounced, and there he was, her nephew, standing with a backpack slung over one shoulder, eyes wide with excitement, an awkward smile that reminded her of his childhood charm, and in that instant, her chest felt tight with a mix of surprise and something else she couldn't name. He called out, "Emma! I hope I'm not interrupting," and she forced a calm smile, brushing a strand of hair from her face, telling him it was no problem, though her pulse quickened as they hugged briefly, the warmth lingering longer than expected, a connection stretching across the years and unspoken feelings, and for a moment, the farm seemed to fade around them, replaced by the memory of summer spent together, picking apples, chasing chickens, and sharing secrets under the shade of old oak trees. But that brief nostalgia was broken when a sudden clatter came from the barn, a sound that made them both freeze, the air charged with curiosity and a little tension, Emma's heart skipping a beat as she exchanged a glance with him, sensing the same mixture of excitement and worry reflected in his eyes, and without thinking, they rushed together toward the source, pushing open the creaking barn doors to find a mess of hay scattered on the floor and the old fencing knocked loose, revealing several lambs huddled together, eyes wide and soft, their tiny bleats echoing in the wooden space, and he laughed, a light, easy sound that made Emma's chest tighten again, as they crouched side by side, working together to free the frightened animals, his hands brushing hers occasionally, each touch sending an unexpected spark through her, a reminder of how familiar and yet strangely intense his presence always felt, and though they joked and teased about the lamb's antics, there was an underlying current of unspoken emotion, a tension neither dared to name, the sun climbing higher outside, spilling through the cracks in the barn walls, casting patterns of light on the straw-strewn floor as they finally managed to calm the animals, leading them to a safe corner with fresh feed and water, both panting from effort but smiling, the shared accomplishment wrapping them in a quiet intimacy that words could not capture, Emma noticing how grown-up he looked, how his easy confidence mixed with a gentle care that made her heart ache with both pride and longing, a realization that he was no longer just the mischievous boy she remembered, but someone with depth and presence that drew her in, a bittersweet ache hitting her as she remembered how often she had thought about him, moments missed, conversations left unsaid, and now here he was unexpectedly, filling the space around her with laughter, warmth and memories, and when he finally stood, brushing straw from his jeans, Emma felt an almost dizzying rush of emotion, the kind that comes from being reminded of something precious and fragile. The day stretched ahead of them, full of promise and possibility, yet tinged with uncertainty, as neither knew how to navigate the mix of nostalgia, admiration, and subtle attraction that had quietly grown over the years, and as they stepped outside into the open fields, the breeze carrying the scent of apples and hay, the farm alive with sounds of morning life, Emma couldn't help but notice the way sunlight caught his hair, the easy tilt of his shoulders, the way he seemed to belong here as much as she did. Thought that made her chest tighten again, and she felt a sudden urge to show him everything, to share the farm, her life, and perhaps even a little more of herself than she usually allowed, all while keeping her composure, the excitement of the unexpected visit mixing with nervous anticipation, every glance and laugh carrying unspoken messages, and as they walked toward the orchard, she felt the pull of emotion she had buried, a longing for connection, for understanding, for something deeper. While he spoke of the journey to get here, the work he had left behind, and the little moments he had missed, each story weaving a thread between them, binding them closer, yet leaving a tension in the air, the kind that makes hearts race quietly, privately, a quiet storm of feelings neither could yet name, and just as she was about to offer him a freshly picked apple, a sound from the far side of the barnyard startled them, a low thump, perhaps an animal, perhaps something else, and they both froze, exchanging a glance filled with curiosity and a hint of fear, the perfect cliffhanger that promised adventure, mischief, and perhaps even revelation, Emma's heartbeat quickening as she realized that this day, which had begun so simply with a surprise visit, was about to unfold into something unforgettable, a day full of laughter, emotion, and moments that would linger long after the sun dipped below the hills. And as she stepped forward toward the sound, her nephew beside her, the soft rustle of leaves and distant crow of a rooster grounding them in the present, she felt the thrill of anticipation, the electricity of shared experience, and the undeniable sense that nothing would ever be quite the same again, that the farm, the animals, the sunlight, and most of all, this unexpected visit, had opened a door to emotions she thought were long buried, a door neither of them would soon forget, leaving viewers and listeners hanging in that instant, eager for what would come next. The perfect start to an unforgettable story on a quiet farm that had suddenly become a stage for heartwarming surprises and gentle, tender connections. After the sudden noise from the barn had settled and the lambs were safe in their cozy corner, Emma and her nephew stepped out into the sun-drenched fields, their breath still a little heavy from the rush of helping the animals, and the air between them felt charged with a quiet tension, a mix of familiarity and something more complicated that neither could name but both could feel. He brushed straw from his jeans, laughing softly at how clumsy they had been, and she found herself smiling, her chest warming at the sight of his easy confidence, the way he moved with a relaxed grace that reminded her of every summer they had spent together, running through these fields, chasing chickens, stealing apples, and sharing secrets that no one else knew, now replaced by subtle glances and pauses that carried unspoken emotions, the kind that linger long after words fail. And as they walked toward the orchard, the trees heavy with ripe fruit, their shadows stretching across the ground, Emma noticed how the sunlight caught in his hair, how his eyes sparkled when he smiled, and for a fleeting second, the world seemed to narrow down to just the two of them, a bubble of warmth and nostalgia that made her heart ache with longing. He told her about the journey here, about the little adventures he had on the way, stories of city life that sounded chaotic and dull compared to the calm of the farm, and she listened, fascinated by every word, laughing at the funny moments and sighing at the hardships he mentioned, feeling a pull toward him she hadn't realized was still there, the bond of family deepening into something richer, more intricate, and a little dangerous in its intensity. As the afternoon sun climbed higher, painting the orchard in golden light, they stopped beneath a particularly large apple tree, apples hanging heavy above them, the air smelling sweet and earthy, and he reached up to pluck one, his fingers brushing hers briefly, an accidental touch that sent a jolt through her, leaving a warmth in her chest she couldn't ignore, and for a moment, they just stood there, sharing the silence, the world around them alive with birdsong, the distant hum of insects, and the whisper of leaves in the gentle breeze, yet filled with a quiet anticipation, a feeling that something significant was unfolding, though neither knew exactly what it was. She wanted to speak, to tell him how much she had missed him, how much she had thought about him over the months and years, but the words got caught in her throat, the right moment never quite arriving, leaving a delicious ache in her heart. He laughed softly at some memory she had mentioned from childhood, his eyes crinkling at the corners, and she felt a pang of longing for the boy she had once known and the man he had become, both familiar and new at the same time. And as they walked along the orchard path, their hands brushing occasionally, small sparks igniting with each accidental touch, Emma realized the day had shifted from ordinary to something remarkable, a slow unveiling of emotions, unspoken desires, and quiet admiration, their conversation flowing naturally from childhood stories to dreams for the future. And she noticed how easily he spoke of his fears and hopes, how honest and vulnerable he seemed, a side she hadn't seen before, and it made her feel closer to him, even as a subtle tension built between them, a line neither dared to cross but both could feel. As they reached the edge of the orchard, the horizon painted with the soft glow of late afternoon, he suddenly stopped, his expression shadowed with thought, and Emma's heart lurched, sensing the weight of something unsaid. He glanced at her, hesitation in his eyes, and she asked gently, "What's wrong?" But he shook his head, a fleeting frown appearing before being replaced by his usual easy smile. "It's complicated," he murmured, and Emma felt a twist of anxiety and longing at the vagueness, the unsaid words lingering like a soft storm between them. They moved on together, walking toward the small pond at the far end of the farm, the water sparkling under the sun, reflecting the clouds above. And he paused again to skip stones, a simple act, yet intimate in its quietness. Watching him brought a sense of nostalgia and deep emotion she hadn't expected, the gentle ripples carrying a metaphorical weight she couldn't ignore, as if every stone thrown mirrored the unspoken truths, the possibilities, the tension that hovered between them. They laughed at the clumsy attempts, shared playful teasing, the warmth of their closeness contrasting with the ache in her heart, the ache of unspoken feelings that had grown too long. And when he finally looked at her, a serious expression breaking through the laughter, she felt the intensity of his gaze, the weight of connection, longing, and vulnerability in the simple act of eye contact. She realized how much she had missed him, missed the spark of familiarity that was now tinged with a deeper attraction she could neither name nor ignore. And he finally broke the silence, voice soft and almost hesitant. "Emma, I didn't know how much I needed this being here with you." And her chest tightened at the sincerity, the quiet emotion in his tone, a confession that left her heart fluttering with hope and fear at the same time. They stood side by side, watching the water shimmer, the gentle wind moving through the grass, the farm alive with sound and light, yet cocooned in a moment that felt suspended, delicate, and full of promise. And as the shadows grew longer, signaling the approach of evening, Emma realized the day had transformed from a casual, unexpected visit into a tapestry of emotion, intimacy, and connection. Each shared glance, laugh, and gentle touch weaving a story of its own. A story neither of them could have anticipated. A day that would linger in memory long after the sun had set. A day that felt charged with meaning, possibility, and a tender, unspoken bond, the kind that builds slowly, quietly, under the warmth of sunlight and the hush of nature, leaving the listener hanging, yearning to know what would happen next, as both Emma and her nephew, hearts beating just a little faster, stepped together toward the farmhouse, the soft crunch of grass underfoot echoing the rhythm of the moment, anticipation hanging thick in the air, the promise of secrets shared, confessions made, and a subtle, tender connection that neither wanted to end. And just as they reached the porch, the distant sound of the wind rustling through the trees carried a hint of something unexpected, a gentle reminder that the day's story was far from over, leaving both of them with a thrill of suspense, excitement, and an emotional pull that would shape the rest of their unforgettable day. As the sun sank lower behind the rolling hills, casting long shadows across the farm, Emma and her nephew walked slowly back toward the farmhouse, the golden light wrapping around them like a gentle embrace, the air rich with the scent of earth, apples, and hay, a quiet calm settling over the land. Yet between them, tension and unspoken feelings simmered, each glance and brush of their hands carrying meaning, their earlier laughter from the orchard now replaced by a reflective silence, broken only by the distant crow of a rooster or the rustle of leaves in the evening breeze. Emma's heart beat faster with a mix of anticipation and nervousness. She felt the pull of something she had long tried to ignore, a deep longing that went beyond family ties, and she sensed it mirrored in him, the subtle warmth of his presence, the careful way he stayed near, the gentle way he spoke, all of it tugging at her heart, making her acutely aware of every small movement, every shared look, every quiet laugh. As they reached the porch, the farmhouse glowing with soft lamplight, Emma invited him in for dinner, the smell of home-cooked food filling the air, simmering stews and fresh bread, and they moved into the kitchen, slipping into a comfortable rhythm of preparing the table, sharing tasks, exchanging stories, their hands brushing occasionally, sending little sparks of awareness through both of them, conversation flowing effortlessly, shifting from childhood memories to the struggles and triumphs of recent years, each story bringing them closer, a sense of intimacy building naturally, like a quiet river gaining strength. Emma watched him, noticing the subtle gestures, the warmth in his eyes, the ease with which he shared laughter and admitted fears, and she felt a mixture of nostalgia and excitement, a gentle ache in her chest that made the day feel charged with quiet magic. Dinner passed with laughter, teasing, and the occasional pause filled with silent understanding, and when the plates were cleared, they moved outside to the small garden behind the house, the evening air cool, carrying the scent of flowers and freshly turned soil, stars beginning to sprinkle across the darkening sky, a soft glow reflecting in their eyes as they leaned against the garden fence, talking quietly about dreams and regrets, the kind of conversation that leaves both people feeling seen and heard. Emma noticed how vulnerable he seemed, how genuine, how present, and she felt her heart respond, soft and tender, recognizing that the connection between them had grown into something deeper over the course of the day, a bond of understanding, longing, and quiet desire. And he looked at her, voice low, gentle, almost a whisper, saying, "I'm really glad I came. I didn't realize how much I needed this." And the words struck her with their honesty, the simplicity of the statement carrying weight beyond their meaning, a confession of appreciation, need, and a subtle emotional attachment. And Emma's chest tightened, her throat warm as she wanted to reply, to tell him everything she had felt, every missed moment, every quiet wish, every longing she had tucked away. But the right words seemed too fragile, too heavy for the night air, so she simply smiled, heart-fluttering eyes meeting his, sharing a silence that spoke volumes, the connection between them growing like a tender vine, wrapping around their emotions, delicate yet unbreakable. And then he gestured toward the old wooden swing beneath the big oak tree, worn and familiar from their childhood, and they moved toward it together, the cool grass brushing their ankles, the swing creaking softly as he sat, motioning for her to join, and she did, sliding beside him, feeling the comforting rhythm of the seat and the warmth of his presence beside her, their shoulders brushing lightly, the closeness both thrilling and terrifying, the gentle sway of the swing carrying them into a quiet, reflective mood, stars now twinkling overhead, the moon casting a soft silver glow across the farm, the sounds of the night alive with crickets and distant owls, creating a cocoon of intimacy. Emma found herself leaning slightly toward him, aware of every heartbeat, every breath, feeling the gentle pull of attraction mixed with the familiarity of family, a complicated, tender emotion, and he turned to her, eyes searching hers, as if asking silently for permission to close the gap that had existed for so long, and she felt herself nod, not with words, but with the quiet acceptance of shared feelings, the swing moving back and forth carrying the gentle rhythm of their hearts, a rhythm that matched the pulse of the night, each movement, glance, and shared laugh cementing a bond that felt both inevitable and miraculous. And as the wind rustled the leaves, carrying the sweet scent of night-blooming flowers, he reached out, brushing a stray strand of hair from her face, the touch lingering, soft and deliberate, and she felt the warmth spread through her chest, a mix of comfort, longing, and excitement, the kind of feeling that leaves you breathless without moving at all. They shared stories under the stars, tales of hope, regret, and the tiny victories that made life meaningful, alternating between laughter and thoughtful silence, and in those moments, the ordinary world faded, leaving only the magic of connection, intimacy, and understanding, the farm around them a quiet witness to emotions blossoming gently but insistently, as if the land itself approved of their closeness, the swing swaying slowly, the night deepening. Emma felt an unspoken promise in his gaze, a subtle acknowledgement that this day, this visit, had changed everything, and she realized that the simple act of sharing time, stories, and presence had brought them closer than words could capture, hearts touching in ways that neither had dared to imagine until now. And as the chill of night crept in, they moved back toward the farmhouse, carrying the warmth of their shared moments like a soft glow around them, stepping inside to the gentle light, a fire crackling in the hearth, the smell of wood smoke mixing with lingering scents of dinner and fresh apples, sitting side by side in comfortable silence, the day's events replaying in their minds, laughter and tender moments looping endlessly. And he spoke again, voice low, almost hesitant. "Emma, I don't want this day to end." And the simplicity of his words, weighted with sincerity and emotion, made her chest ache with a mix of happiness and longing, and she reached for his hand, their fingers intertwining naturally, a gentle acknowledgement of everything unspoken, a connection solid and comforting. And as the night deepened, they talked, laughed, and sometimes just sat in silence, sharing the profound peace of each other's presence, the kind of quiet intimacy that feels both fragile and eternal, the moonlight streaming through the windows casting patterns on the floor, highlighting the contours of their faces, the softness in their expressions. And as the evening wore on, Emma realized that this unexpected visit had brought more than surprise. It had brought clarity, emotional connection, and a sense of completeness she hadn't felt in years. And when they finally stepped outside again for a last look at the starlit fields, the cool night air brushing their cheeks, they stood close, hands still entwined, hearts beating in unison, the farm quiet except for the soft rustle of trees and distant night sounds. And in that moment, Emma felt the weight of everything. The nostalgia, the longing, the subtle attraction, the warmth of family, and something more profound, a feeling that the day had carved a permanent space in both of their hearts, a memory of laughter, tender moments, quiet confessions, and shared understanding, leaving the listener with the sense that life can bring unexpected joy, emotional awakening, and unforgettable connections when least expected. The kind of story that lingers long after the last words, leaving hearts warmed and minds full of hope. And as they finally turned toward the farmhouse, ready to rest after a day full of emotion, Emma knew this visit had changed everything, solidifying a bond that was both familiar and new, comforting yet thrilling. and that the memory of this unforgettable day, with its laughter, quiet intimacy, tender moments, and shared vulnerability, would remain with them forever, a gentle, emotional, romantic chapter in their lives, perfectly safe, heartfelt, and full of meaning, leaving the story complete yet lingering in the mind like the soft glow of stars over a quiet farm at night.